Hello everyone. Question for you. What does a math teacher eat on Halloween? Okay, you'll find out the answer at the end. Now for properties of exponent part 2, we are going to be talking about anything raised. It's called using exponential notation in raising powers to powers. Okay, so what this means is when you see two variables like this together, you're going to multiply. So we kind of hit on that a little bit today in our classwork, but I just want to emphasize what it actually means. So let's look at 5 squared to the third power. What that actually means that there are 3 of them. There's a 5 squared times 5 squared times 5 squared. And we know from yesterday's lesson that if you have the same base, you keep the base and you add all of the exponents together to get 6. Okay, so now if you compare what our answer is compared to what's going on right here, you can see that 2 times 2 equals 6. So that is where we get our rule that you're going to, anytime you have a power to the power, you're going to multiply the 2 of them. So let's practice a few problems. And number 1 looks like this. 8 to the negative 3 to the 4th. Okay? So again, what this means is 8 to the negative 3, 8 to the negative 3, 8 to the negative 3, and one last 8 to the negative 3. Okay? Anything with the same base, we can use the base as part of the answer. And then if we add all of these exponents together, negative 3, and there are 4 of them, so we're going to have negative 12 for the answer. Now again, compare. Look at that. Multiply them together, you get negative 12. So we can skip this step of writing them out. We do not need to write that out all the time. If we can just remember that when you have any kind of number to any kind of power, you are just going to multiply those 2 exponents together to get x to the 28th. Okay, so if you look at some more examples, let's change it up a little bit. Okay, with a lot of parentheses and more than one thing going on inside of the parentheses. So we have 2xy to the third power. Okay, what this means is we're going to put a 2 on every single term. So we did that a couple sections ago as well. Okay, cleanup would be taking this and evaluating it, which is 8, x cubed, y cubed. Okay, so let's combine a lot of different things we've been talking about. Negative 2, x to the 4th, y squared, all to the 5th power. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is take negative 2 to the 5th power, and then x to the 4th to the 5th power, and then y squared to the 5th power. Now what that's going to help me do is just to stay organized and make sure I do not forget anything. Because the multiplication sign, where that is separating them, that's how I knew to separate them, as you see here. Okay, so negative 2 to the 5th power is negative 2 5 times. So off to the side, if I kind of like to see what I'm dealing with here. So this right here is 4, this is 4, so I've got 16 times negative 2, which gets you 30, or negative 32. And then we have power to a power, so we're going to multiply those 2. And again, we have power to a power, and we're going to multiply again to get y to the 10th. Alright, this time I want you to try this. Go ahead and push pause and see what you come up with. Your final answer, I want you to have no negative exponents. No negative exponents. Try that. Okay, so hopefully the first step that you did was put everything to the third power. The 10, the x to the negative 4, the y to the 7th needs to be to the third power, and z to the negative 2 to the third power. Okay, you're going to want to start taking shortcuts, but I would highly suggest not doing it when it becomes an intense problem like this. There's so many things in there that it's better and more, you'll be more successful if you separate them like this. 10 to the third power, 1,000. And then if we start multiplying together, x to the negative 12. And then the next one, we have 7 times 3, which is 21. And then the last one is y, oops, sorry about that. It's going to be z to the negative 6. And you cannot use negative exponents in this one, as I had said in the directions. So we have 1,000. Let me get something you can actually see. 1,000 y to the 21st, because that's the only positive one, over x to the 12th power z to the 6th. Now we have no negative exponents for the answer. Okay, the next section is going to be similar because we're going to have power to power, but we have to figure out how to do this with rational numbers, with fractions, right? So in general, if you see anything with division, that exponent right here is going to go on to each one of them. So, for example, a to the m to the p, and then the bottom b to the n to the p. You have to multiply, as we just talked about before. A to the MP, B to the NP would be a final answer. Okay, so let's look at some examples. Okay, so what if you had 3 to the second power over 2 to the negative 2 power to the 4th power? Okay, so as we look at the rule above, it would be 3 to a power, so 3 squared to the 4th over 2 to the negative 2 to the 4th. Okay, so then we know to take those two and multiply them together. 3 to the 8th over 2 to the negative 8. Okay, now another thing you might be wondering is, well, what can I do now with that negative exponent? Well, you also could write it as 3 to the 8th and 2 to the 8th. Okay, let's try another one. I want you to push pause on this one and try it on your own. It is x to the negative 3 over y to the 4th, and that's to the negative 3. Okay, so individually the top would look like this, x to the negative 3 to the negative 3 over the bottom, which would be y to the 4th to the negative 3. Okay, so if you multiply the power to power, use that rule, negative 3 times negative 3 is 9, and the power to the power of the rule on the bottom is negative 12. Okay, or with no negative exponents, it would be x to the 9th and y to the 12th. Okay, number 8, I also want you to push pause. See how you will do on this one. Lots of things going on here. All to the second power. So go ahead and push pause, write that down, and try to solve it. So with squared on the outside, it would be 3 squared, x squared to the second power, y to the negative 3 to the second power, all over 2 to the second power, y to the negative 1, and the second power. Okay, so once you've spread it all out, now we can evaluate. First of all, the 3 squared, that's 9, and x to squared to the squared, so that would be x to the 4th because we're multiplying them, y to the negative 6 because we're multiplying them, 4 because it's just a regular integer to an exponent, and then y to the negative 2. So if I were to ask without negative exponents, we would leave the 9 and the 4 because they have no negative exponent attached to them. We would leave the x to the 4th, and we know that if we have anything in common, here we have the same base, we can subtract them. So it would be a y, I'll put this off to the side, negative 6 minus a negative 2. So that's a minus sign, by the way. And so 2 negatives make a positive, so it would be a negative 6 plus 2, and you get y to the negative 4. So that's what should go right here. But like I said, no negative exponents, so it would be 9 x to the 4th over 4 y to the 4th. for your final answer. Okay, and then one last one before we're done here. Number 9. Okay, go ahead and write this problem down and go ahead and practice it. Okay, so if you wrote out everything correctly, it would be 3 squared. X squared would be also squared. Y to the negative 3 would be squared. All over 6 squared. X to the negative 1 squared. Y to the 7th squared. Okay, so clean up. We've got 3 squared is 9. Power to a power rule. Power to a power rule. We're multiplying the exponents. 6 times 6 is 36. Power to a power rule and power to a power rule. Anytime they're separated by a parenthesis. Okay, so when we have integers, we need to reduce them. 9 goes into 36 4 times, so I'm going to put 1 on the top, 4 on the bottom. The next one we have, I need to subtract, so x, and it's 4 minus a negative 2, so I get x to the 6th. And then this last one here, y, negative 6 minus 14 is going to be y to the 20th, y to the negative 20th. And then if I have no negative exponents, x to the 6th over 4y to the 20th. All right, hope you did well. I'll be ready for any questions tomorrow. And speaking of questions, what does the math teacher eat on Halloween? You've guessed it, it was pumpkin pie.